Hi, everyone. It's Pat Sherlock teaching economics in the School of Business at NSCC. I wanted to just take a few minutes this morning and talk a little bit about the economics project that you have underway. Good work so far. I see the team minutes coming in. Great job of dividing up the topics and tackling things at the micro macro level. I'd like to just give you a little overview of a couple things to keep in mind. I would start number one with a bit of company background history. So I think tell me a little bit about who the owners are, how the company started, how many employees, any financial numbers. Do some research. Make sure you include citations and make sure you include references. Really important. Make it look very professional. You could assign that to one member of the group, or if you're working individually, just a three-quarters of a page or a page. The big part of the project is focusing on demand and supply, and you've got to talk about supply in terms of what do they produce, how costly is it, where do they get it from. If they're products they get from the US, it would be really fantastic if you talked about trade, talked about the effect of the dollar, because of course now companies that buy from the US, it's very expensive to buy their products, their supplies, but the US dollar goes so much further that if they're selling to the American market, there's huge demand for their products. So think about that. In terms of demand, elasticity of demand is a topic you should know, and you can look it up in one of your textbooks or you can look it up online. But basically, a company that sells an elastic product means that if they raise their price by even a small amount, they lose a huge amount of demand because it's something that has a lot of substitutes and it's something that customers will quickly switch to. If it's a specialty type product, demand would be inelastic, meaning that you can raise your price and still see your demand stay the same because there are very few substitutes for the product. So think about that and write about that. So focus on the microeconomics. That's the business of small firms, of businesses. So for example, you'll talk about who their competition is. What form of competition are they? Are they a monopoly? Are they pure competition? Talk a little bit about that. So that will take up a few pages of your report. And then one part of the report that I'd like is near the end. I would like you to focus on macroeconomics. And macroeconomics is how the overall Canadian economy is doing. So you would talk about not just the Canadian economy, but I want you to focus in on Nova Scotia. You could look at the One Nova Scotia report. Lots written online about our declining population, our immigration rates going down, birth rates going down. The result is declining labor, declining GDP. We have high unemployment, but it's not that high. If you consider normal unemployment at 6%, we're only running at somewhere between 7, 8.5. So, actually doing not badly, which is good for the economy. But take a look at how many new businesses start, the state of the overall economy. And again, you can find some references and citations for that. Do some research, talk about the Nova Scotia economy. For example, would you see Nova Scotia as a great place for a new business to start or to expand a business? And with a declining population, if you're selling primarily to Nova Scotia, you can see the issue. That's the problem with something like buy local, for example. If Nova Scotia devoted itself entirely to a buy local policy, we just don't have the population. And the problem would be we wouldn't have enough demand to support companies. Companies would just stay small. They have to export. If other countries, if the United States, if other provinces had a buy local policy, we'd be in real trouble in Nova Scotia because if they stopped buying our goods, we would have so little demand. So something like buy local, you could even mention. It supports some companies, and it can be devastating to the economy to other companies. And yet you'll see people who just don't understand both sides of that issue, running around with buy local stickers, and they don't understand that if the entire world went buy local, the United States, for example, and China decided they were only going to buy from each other, we would be in a devastating situation. So it's much more complicated, but small companies need the support of local demand. So for example, you can talk about that and how important that is. That's a reason for buy local. So there's always two sides to an issue. And as students, I hope students of economics, you're becoming much more familiar with that. Now I've said a lot, so just in summary, do a little bit of history, background on the company, do some research, talk about their products, number of employees, who owns it. Then move to a huge focus on demand and supply and look at their costs and where they get their products. Talk about the US dollar, the Canadian dollar. Does it affect them? Even if it doesn't, you could still make up a scenario where if they were intending to sell into the US market, what if they did export? You can talk about that. focus on the overall Nova Scotia economy and talk about that, talk about competition, talk about the marketplace. For example, if incomes go up and GDP goes up in Nova Scotia, people have more income in their pockets. If the new government, the Trudeau government, lowers income tax on middle class and lower income folks, we have a lot of those people in Nova Scotia. They have more money, and demand will go up. Also, think about areas, if any of you are from rural Nova Scotia, think of the effect of the quickly declining population in rural Nova Scotia. It's a decline in overall demand in the economy, which is a macroeconomic effect. So I just wanted to leave you with a few things to think about. Please hang in there, folks. We are headed well, we're well into November. You've got almost just a month to go. So things are looking pretty good, and please continue to submit the assignments. All the best. Cheers. Bye.